Before we continue, special announcement. We have just launched the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast drone pilot checklist. So whether you are a hobbyist or a commercial operator, this checklist will make sure that you have everything in order before you take off for your next flight. Now, to get the checklist, there's a link in the description. You sign up and you will receive it in your email. Now, we are also announcing that we'll be launching the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast newsletter in a couple of weeks. That is coming soon. And once you sign up to receive the checklist, you'll automatically be added to the newsletter listing. Or if you want to sign up for the newsletter, you can head over to the website, pilotsofthecaribbeanpod.com, and there's a form on the homepage where you could submit your name and your email address, and you added to the newsletter list. And I guarantee you're not going to want to miss out on that because we have some really good stuff coming at you. So checklist, link in the description. If you just want to sign up for the newsletter, head over to the website and sign up now. Now back to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast, where we talk about all things drones and how they're being used in the Caribbean. Now, my guest this week hails from the US. And if you've spent any kind of time on YouTube looking at educational drone videos, learning how to do drone workflows for different things like mapping, LiDAR, that kind of stuff, you've probably come across his videos. So getting right into it, please enjoy my conversation with Mr. Dylan Gorman of Pilot Byte. Enjoy. Hi, Dylan. Thank you for coming on this week's episode of the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Not too bad. Just have some rain right now. I hope that doesn't affect the audio too much, but other than that, all good on this side. Dylan, for us to get going, how about we start by you introducing yourself to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I appreciate you having me on here today. I know I'm not in the Caribbean, but I'm close enough. I'm in Florida. But with that being said, I've been in this space for well over a decade. Started out with just a basic Phantom 2 drone that I convinced my dad to go buy because I was going to go make some money back on it. That never actually happened. I just had a lot of fun when I was younger, just getting into the UAV space, just learning how stuff worked. And then ultimately found my way into doing what I think most people do is get into residential real estate, shooting photos and videos. I did some action sports as well, and upgraded my drone here and there, and then I actually fell into the production industry. So my background actually goes way further than drones. I was actually in video production, doing TV shows, doing music videos, even doing a little bit of directing for various companies between Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. So that's kind of where my experience stems from. Obviously, I was using drones then as a cinematography tool, just a flying camera. And then there's an opportunity that actually fell into my lap to do a very creative project for commercial real estate in terms of just giving it a different perspective. And the first meeting that I had with this company, I asked, hey, have you guys ever done a 3D scan or just a scan with a drone before? They're like, no. And truth be said, I actually hadn't either. I just saw some YouTube videos about it. And that day I got my trial of drone deploy and scanned my parents' house about 15 times before I went to this client's site. I did the scan. It went phenomenal. I processed everything and then came back later at the end of the week, met with the owner of the company. By the end of the meeting, the entire company was in the conference room. People's jaws were on the floor. You could see light bulbs going off in people's heads of like, wow, this technology is actually fascinating. And this was like 9 years ago at this point. Okay. Yeah. So very, very early on, early stages of all this stuff. And from that point, like instantly, it was a buddy of mine who actually brought the opportunity to me. We got the contract immediately to start doing progress updates for this client. We grew through referrals, and we actually only had that company for about 1 year and 3 months. We ended up selling that company to a software company that was heavily in the commercial real estate space. My time there, I actually expanded the program up to, we had about 100 contract pilots that were flying for us all across the United States, up in Alaska, down in Puerto Rico, capturing maps of all over the place. And we were averaging about 150 to 200 flights a week, which I mean was explosive. I was going from doing most of it on my own to then having a massive team of operators all over the place collecting geospatial data for us, for our clients in real time. And during my time doing that is actually when I started dabbling into doing some YouTube. I wanted to tell people or really showcase, hey, there's actually more that you can do with drones than, just buy it from Best Buy or Amazon and, take it on your travels and take some cool photos and videos. Like, you can actually get real value out of creating 2D maps, 3D models from it. So I just started creating some YouTube videos, not with the intentions of getting to where I am today, but it was explosive. People absolutely loved it. They want to learn more. And I actually had created some training guides for these contract pilots that I worked with, because they, a lot of them just got their Part 107 certification and were doing kind of the same thing that everybody else is doing, just doing residential real estate. And so when we were kind of getting them into doing the commercial side, they didn't really know what was going on. So I had to create some very basic training videos for them, which then I ended up starting my company Pilot Byte, that I've now been running for the last 4 years. I actually ended up leaving the software company after about 2 years of being there to go and build Pilot Byte. And so now what I primarily do is, obviously I'm on YouTube, but that's more so for just the free education that I provide and insight, and working with a lot of companies, both hardware and software, all around the world, to bring the technology to the masses. Because I heavily focus on the commercial and industrial side of the space. I don't really focus on consumer technology for drones. And with that has presented a abundance of opportunities to work with all kinds of engineering and surveying firms, working with people globally. I know we chatted about Brian, who actually was at my workshop about a few weeks ago to learn more about LiDAR data collection. So yeah, now I do the YouTube. I have online training for both drone mapping and LiDAR data collection, and I also do workshops, and I do a lot of consulting as well in the space, to really just kind of bring all of this technology, put it out there, help companies integrate it, because I personally believe that we are still in the infancy stages of this technology. Like, it is just starting to explode. And it's really exciting. So very long-winded explanation of who I am and what I've done and where I am now, and kind of what I'm doing today.
So the company that you guys started, it sounded like it was wildly successful. So a lot of people might be looking at this, and I myself am wondering, so why sell it?
Well, I was pretty young. I had actually just turned 21 when I sold that company, and I saw it as an opportunity to get access to more tools and resources. As a 21-year-old, a bank is not just going to give me a $150,000 loan to go buy whatever equipment. So I saw it as an opportunity to get deeper into some deeper pockets, not for my own self-interest, but to really start developing this technology more. And the space that I was operating in wasn't really leveraging the technology as much as I thought it would, which is why I spent 2 years there of working with some of the biggest commercial real estate companies in the United States. A little fun fact, actually, one of the companies, I can't necessarily name drop them, but I think people kind of put the pieces together. 5% of the world's GDP went through their warehouses, and that was our client that we were actually collecting data for, and creating high resolution maps and models for their assets, for really the investors to have a better understanding of their entire portfolio. I mean, we're talking about like 3,500 warehouses, distribution centers around the US that I directly managed and helped collect the data on. So with that, I mean, that was later down the line, but by having the additional resources from a multi-million-dollar company to invest into the drone technology, it allowed me to really start pushing the boundaries of how this technology can be used on the commercial real estate side. Obviously, there's a surveying and engineering side, which they obviously have some relatively deep pockets and they invest into that equipment. But when it comes to a technology sense on a software company, that was not normal. So that was why I sold the company. I mean, we grew entirely from referrals. I never spent a single dollar on advertising with that company. It was all just referral based, by building relationships, building connections, people locally, and then ended up, going to multiple different states to meet with some other companies as well before I sold. And really, the software company, they actually offered to buy us out. I had no intentions of selling the company as early as we did.
Right.
But it was an offer that I just couldn't resist. And I'm like forever grateful for it because, again, it gave me access to some incredible tools to really start pushing the boundaries of what was being done in the industry.
Well, so today we have Pilot Byte, and Pilot
Yep.
Byte primarily focuses on education for operators, but specifically geared towards mapping and LiDAR. So photogrammetry and LiDAR.
I would say, yeah, just as like a general statement, yes, that could be true. But I also do a lot of consulting in helping companies actually integrate the technology too.
Okay.
And it's really any size company. Like I've worked with 1-2 man teams that are just getting started up to multi-million-dollar companies that are starting to build out their drone teams internally, but also understanding how this technology integrates directly with their workflows.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these companies, there's a saying that we have here in the US. I think it's more of like a Southern saying, is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it's very much like the mentality that is here. There's a lot of the older generation. They are some of them are afraid of change, right? Of technology. Some of them just don't understand it, which makes them afraid, right? If they don't understand it, then why are they going to dump all this money into it?
Yeah.
If they don't know how it works or they don't know how it can benefit them. But we're starting to see that shift tremendously. There's a lot of companies that are now starting to get young blood in them that are getting into executive roles and management roles too, that understand that technology is a necessity. And if they don't integrate it now, they're going to fall behind and not be able to, stay ahead of the curve. So that's kind of where I come into play. I come in and help really translate what their like workflows have been and show, hey, it's a very simple integration with these specific tools. So I would say that's kind of like a very big part that I do kind of on behind the scenes that I don't really put out there on YouTube. The YouTube is more for just like a general just introduction and education around the tech. And then obviously my workshops and online courses is more of take it like a technical school, right? If you want to be a plumber or an electrician, you're not just going to go to your hardware store or department store and go and buy the tools and start a business and say, hey, I'm the plumber, like I'm the guy to go to, because that's just not how it works. Like it takes 5 years to actually be like a someone that can be trusted in being able to actually provide the service, right? And so I think this is kind of the same thing. We're in a service-based industry, and in order to provide the service at a good qualitative level, I don't think going at it as I have these many clients is the best route to go down. I think it's, hey, how do I make sure that every single time I deliver something to a client, it's better than the last time that I did it, right? And keep building on top of that. And so being a service provider, you have to continue to educate yourself. You have to continue to get better at the tools that you already have so that you can work onto that next tool. Because everybody thinks that if I go and spend 10,000 or 20,000 US dollars on this system, that I'm going to get all of this work. When in reality, that's not really how it works. Sure, you can dump a ton of money into it and then it'll eventually work through brute force. But I think people that are just starting out with maybe 1,000 or 5,000 US dollars can get very far, very fast. But that's if they really put the time, effort into learning how the tools work and then how they benefit the potential client base or the industries that they're trying to get into.
Is that one of the biggest issues that you see with newer drone companies, especially?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of them just kind of jump the gun. I mean, I see this all the time. I get comments and emails saying, hey, Dylan, like I just bought this system, and this system. And I haven't been able to get any clients for the last few months. Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, how can you help me out? And I'll ask them, I said, well, like, do you even know how to use the tools? And not like in a mean way, just genuinely, like, do you know how to leverage the tools? Like, do you know what industries that you're trying to target? Do you know what the service is? Like, can you confidently tell me without looking at a sheet what it is that you do and why it provides value to the industry or the client that you're trying to serve?
Right.
And if they can't tell me that, then they don't have a business plan at all. and they don't really know what they're doing. But that's okay. That's not a bad thing. It's just they didn't take the right steps to properly, one, educate themselves, two, actually understand how the technology works, and three, build a proper business plan and structure to go after the right clientele. Because there's a lot of due diligence that happens. And I tell people that the drone industry is great. It's sexy. It's cool. You're flying robots to collect data for you. But in reality, it's maybe only actually, and I'm being conservative here, but like 5% of the actual job. It's all of the work that you have to do beforehand and actually getting the client, your due diligence on securing the project and actually going and making sure, hey, you're doing the mission planning right. You have all your certifications and waivers in place. You have the right sensors and tools to be able to actually go and not just collect the data, but also process it, right? Because the drone is doing everything for the most part in an automated sense. Unless you're doing very sophisticated manual capture, that's a completely different kind of scope of work. But at the end of the day, when you're doing mapping and modeling, the drone's doing all the work. It's just a matter of, do you have the know-how in how to actually, one, properly collect the data, but two, process it and integrate it directly for what your client's wants and needs are. If you can't do that, then the drone is irrelevant in this entire equation.
So one of the things that you offer is like a mentorship program for already established owners and then persons looking to enter the space. But as a mentor, persons look for, because we have an issue in the Caribbean specifically where we have a lack of, let's say, recognized educational resources where we could go to develop particular drone skills, whether it be LiDAR, whether it be certain types of inspection, things like thermography, that sort of stuff.
Right.
What was some of the like big educational gaps you see from your perspective, being somebody who also works with operators on a day-to-day basis?
Honestly, I would say now there are a lot of tools that do exist. Back when I got started a long time ago, I had to figure it out on my own, which I think is part of the reason why I fell into this educator role. I never thought I was going to be a teacher. I didn't even go to school for this. Actually, I kind of left that out of my background. Like I didn't go to college at all. I was going to college for about 3 months for a completely different industry. Dropped out of it because I felt that I had more value in actually developing my own business and actually putting that tuition money into my own efforts. And luckily things paid off and in that sense, but there was no drone schools. There was nothing that existed. Now that's a little bit different, right? There are universities that are building UAS programs. There's a lot of STEM programs that are coming out. And I am actually getting asked pretty frequently now to donate and sponsor youth programs that are getting into drones and robotics, which I think is fantastic. I didn't have that when I was going to school. That wasn't even a thing that existed in high school when I was going. So I'm a little jealous of all the resources that exist now. But it takes the pioneers to kind of pave the way, right, and go through all the struggles initially. I'm not saying that I'm the only one who's gone through the struggles. Like there's a lot of other people in my industry that have also gone down the same path. I just happen to have a platform that I actually talk about it and help educate, where a lot of them are busy and actually doing a ton of work out in the field. Again, I chose to go down the educational path because I see a ton of value in providing the kind of resources that I have built out over the period of time that I've actually been doing this. So to really answer your question, I think it comes down to the effort that somebody starting out needs to put into getting the right training, the right tools. And I'm not saying I'm the only person that exists out there. I have a few other competitors here that I'm actually pretty good friends with. We're all pretty much the same. We all have one common goal, and that's just helping people understand the technology and be able to implement it properly. Like that's all we really want. I don't necessarily see other drone service providers as competition because there is so much work that exists and so much work that is not talked about. I possibly can't do every single project myself, but that's actually impossible. So if you are someone that is actually considering getting into this industry, put forth the effort and put forth the time to find the proper resources, to do your due diligence, and to really find the path that you want to go down, because I promise you there will be resources that exist there. And as a mentor myself that likes to help people, I make myself as available as I can to help answer people's questions or to help kind of steer them in the right direction, and to also be brutally honest if what they're trying to do does not make sense at the time point that they're trying to do it. Maybe there's a few steps before that they need to take until they take that deep dive into dumping, a ton of money into this equipment or into this industry. I try and be as open and honest as possible.
Why specifically photogrammetry and LiDAR? Because that's one of the things that, you focus on your website, at least in terms of the services that you offer. What made you pick those two particular topics?
Honestly, I would say LiDAR is actually a little bit more new for me, even though I've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years now. Mm-hmm. I say photogrammetry, and really more of like the basis of just mapping in general. I think that's a core fundamental skill that if you can master that, you can go into just about any industry that you want. Whether you're using an RGB camera or a multispectral or a thermal or a LiDAR sensor, they all have pretty much the same workflows with, a few little differences here and there, depending on the sensor that you're doing and the kind of data collection that you're seeking, or really what your client is seeking. If you can master that and understand all the intricacies about it, because it's not just about creating an automated mission plan and throwing your drone up and letting it do its thing. Like, there's a lot of things that you actually have to understand about your altitude, about your resolution, about the accuracy, and what kind of accuracy that you're trying to achieve, and if your sensor can even get that kind of accuracy for you, right? So as long as you can master the technical skills behind that, you'll be fine. You can pretty much pick any direction that you want to go in, any industry that you want to go in, and I can guarantee you that there's going to be some form of automated mapping or data collection involved in that workflow. So that's why I heavily focus on that. I think it's a fundamental skill. If you have that as your baseline, you're going to be set, because then everything else is just building blocks on top of that foundation that you have.
And for persons that may not be familiar, you offer both online and in-person classes that go further into both of those topics.
Yeah, so the online course, my drone mapping course, is about 22 hours long. I'm actually right in the middle of updating it to version 4 to include a lot of the new updates that have happened to drones that exist in the industry, to the software. A lot of them have changed interface. A lot of them have just added some new features. So I try and update it about every 8 to 12 months. And I have it as like a lifetime thing. I hate subscriptions. So when you get access to it, you get access to it for life. And that includes all the updates. And then my in-person workshop is pretty much like an extension of the online course, or really it's for people that want to actually get hands-on with the tools live. And we focus primarily on like the data collection, the data processing. The online course has a lot more background information and a lot more technical information if you want to dive way deeper on that. But I offer that as a complimentary. If you come to the workshop, you get the online course for free. But really the workshop itself is to, like I said, get hands-on with the actual technology that you'll most likely be investing into. That way, straight out the bat, is this something that I want to go down? Because I tell people it's much cheaper to go and get the education, again, whether you get it from me or for somebody else, than to go and spend the thousands of dollars on the equipment and then realize, oh, wait, I actually don't know how this stuff works, or I don't know how to implement this.
Yeah.
So again, that's why I've created the online training and in-person workshop, so that you can do that first. And then you can start adding, the tools that you want to invest into, because we answer all that stuff here. I talk about a ton of stuff. You can ask some of my students. I like to go on tangents about everything, but everything is, we go through stuff very, very detailed and in depth, both online and in person. And it's the same thing for the LiDAR workshop too. I have the online course for that, and the in-person workshop training for that too.
Right. Quick one before we continue. What you all doing in October? Nothing? All right, cool. That's something fair. In October 21st and 22nd, 2025, join the Pilots of the Caribbean podcast at the Elevate UAV Summit 2025, presented by Drone Nerds. Pilots of the Caribbean podcast is an official media partner, and as a part of that, we have a special discount code for our audience. So you're going to use the link in the description to get your ticket. and you're entering discount code Caribbean 75, 75% off your tickets to Elevate UAV Summit 2025 presented by Drone Nerds. So on October the 21st and the 22nd, I expecting to see all my people who could get there in Miami for Elevate UAV 2025. Now back to what we was doing. So let's tackle the elephant in the room with you guys. You guys are going through a bit of a y'all are having a moment in the drone industry in the States in terms of the US and their relationship with Chinese drones. How has that affected what you are doing right now?
Well, I'll be honest. About 2 weeks ago, I spent about $17,000 to buy the DJI M400. Right. So I think that's coming in a week or so.
Hopefully.
Well, no, it is. I got tracking information, so it's going to get held up for a little bit, but I'm fine waiting. Right. So me personally, like I probably have about $250,000 invested into DJI systems, but I have also been now starting to invest into US made systems as well. I started building one. I actually have one just off to the camera here that I started playing around and building. And, to be honest, I 100% understand why the US is doing what it's doing. At least our government is doing what it's doing. Do I agree with the approach? Not so much. I don't think a ban makes the most sense, right? Sure. Given that, we're some of our core fundamentals goes around, hey, we are a free market, so we should let the free market choose what they want and what they deem is the best. And I think everybody can agree that DJI has the best systems ever, at least at this point in time. But I think you also have to consider it's a tool at the end of the day, right? And if the tool can't do the job that you need it to get done, then it's a bad tool, or it's not the right tool, I should say. Yeah. Right. And so there are purpose-built drones that are coming or that have been built here in the US that serve their function, and they serve it very, very well. Now, going back onto the whole ban situation, I don't agree with it. But I do think it's time for us to start realizing that, hey, we pretty much dug ourselves into this hole, right? I think we can all admit that here. And honestly, I don't think it's just a US problem either. And, maybe me using the word problem is a little controversial here, but I do think it's a problem. I think it's a problem that DJI has 80% market share, not just in the US, but like globally. That's a huge issue, right? And if we are so dependent on one single nation to develop all of our tools, that can lead to disaster. That's not a good way to go about. Again, I'm not trashing DJI. They have fantastic systems. Like I said, I have a ton of money invested into it, but I do think it's time for diversity. And DJI is smart. They made this bet 10 years ago. There's a reason why they have been heavily subsidized. And there's a reason why you can pretty much pick any price point and DJI will have the best system in that class, whether it's $250 or up to $30,000 or even $50,000 for their agricultural drones. Yeah. Right. So I think it's time for diversity. I am excited that our government is now putting dollars into subsidizing our own innovation. It's going to take time to catch up. Like it's going to take time for it to catch up. DJI wasn't perfect when they first started. I remember when I first started, I've had plenty of flyaways. I've had plenty of, random signal cutouts with the drone being right in front of my face. Right. So they have come a very long way with their technology, but they made this bet 10 years ago and it shows. And obviously, not to get, political or anything, not picking sides or anything, but I think with the wars that have been happening, obviously the big main one between Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Palestine, and more recently India and Pakistan, there's drones have been the center of all of it. And the reason why we have the tools that we have today is because of situations like that. Yeah. I'm not for war. I think it sucks, but it's just the world that we live in. But if you see the innovation that's coming out of it, specifically what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, it's insane the amount of innovation that's happening, and it's insane how fast Ukraine has been able to just adapt and overcome and build their own and manufacture their own systems to the point where they are now manufacturing more systems in that small country, even though Ukraine's pretty big. And then you look at the US, we don't even come anywhere close to the manufacturing capability that they have. And that's crazy that we have not come that close to it. So yeah, again, I'm not going any deeper than that. just to point out, like that's the situation that we're in right now. So yeah, it sucks that there are hundreds of millions of dollars of DJI systems that exist here, and I don't think they're like, if it gets banned, fine, I'm gonna pivot. But that's easy for me to say, right? Because I'm in a position that okay, I can go and spend $10, $20, $30,000 on a system, and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I know for people that are just getting started, that's scary. Like that's a huge risk to take to get into this industry. But I think it's going to be a few years until I think we get something that's affordable. I really do believe that Skydio had such a huge opportunity 4 or 5 years ago when their S2 came out. $1,000 drone. Obviously, yes, I know it was made in China. Like I'm not naive to that, but it's an American company that developed something and manufactured it. And even if the system was $3,000, that's the same price as some of the other DJI systems right now. That's affordable for a business equipment purchase. $3,000 for a tool. That's cheap. That's really freaking cheap for a tool that does what it does. So I'm going on a long tangent here, but I think what's happening right now is unfortunate for people that are just getting into it. If you really want to get invested into this industry, like it's going to cost a little bit more, but that's more of just a US situation. But I do know by proxy that this does have an effect on, other parts, other regions as well. I think you and I were having a conversation about how the DJI systems have typically come from us for you guys to get the distribution of it.
Yep.
But now it's having to get rerouted and taking a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be uncomfortable, but change is always uncomfortable. Nobody likes change. But I think it's going to be a good growth for the industry. And I don't think it's just the US that's also realizing this. I have some friends up in Canada. I have some friends in other countries as well, where, yeah, I mean, everyone kind of watches and sees what the US does and what bold statements and moves that they make, but it does have an impact on, what happens on a global standpoint.
Yeah.
And I know Europe is also in a very similar position where, I mean, they have some great companies there, like Quantum Systems and Wingtra.
The Swiss
Regal,
are making a
Swiss,
huge push.
Yeah, Swiss are making a huge push, and they are smart for it. I mean, they've invested into it.
Yep.
Are they cheap? No, they're very expensive. But the point still stands: is the world, I think, is now starting to wake up. Some have woken up a few years ago, and I think innovation is just going to skyrocket here soon. And I'm excited for that. I genuinely am very excited for it. It's just, it's going to suck in the interim, but it is what it is. So you can either complain about it or you can get on board and figure it out. That's kind of my standpoint.
From a structure and a course standpoint. So in terms of you being able to develop a course to teach persons in a structured way how to do something, how does the now having all of these variables in terms of different companies to have to work with, how would that affect that for you going forward?
Honestly, it really doesn't affect it that much because I tell people all the time, forget the drone, understand the technique and the workflows, because almost every single software operates just about the same. Whether you're a drone deploy guy, a Pix 4D, UGCS, it doesn't really matter what you use.
Right.
They all have the same function. The system that I'm playing around with right now uses an open source platform. 95% of the other manufacturers are also using this open source platform. So if you know how to use, if I know how to use the system that I built here, I can use just about any other system on the market. And I do, because they all pretty much function the exact same. Right. So yes, the tool does matter to an effect. at the end of the day, like, it depends on what you're trying to provide to your client, right? Do you need high resolution maps? Do you need thermal data? Do you need multispectral, right? That's more of the payload function. But when it comes to the actual operation of the drone and it doing an automated data collection, the principles are pretty much, it's agnostic. And like, that's actually one thing that I preach and that I teach specifically in my course, in my workshops, is I teach basically the technical know-how so that you can operate anything. It's a very agnostic base, both software and hardware. I don't care what you use, as long as you know how to use it and apply it, you'll be good. And that's actually one thing that I differentiate myself over some of my competitors. And I know a lot of them heavily focus on maybe one or two specific software. I focus on 5-6 pieces of software, both for data processing and both for data collection. And then I also teach on multiple different systems on there. And that's actually one thing I'm doing. That's why I keep it updated, is to add other systems. And I have actually this incredible opportunity coming up. We're at this point right now. I've got 16 companies that I'm meeting up with in the middle of August, which is next month at the time of us shooting this podcast here, where I'm going to get hands-on with every single system that I can get my hands on with. And I will be implementing them into my training so that people feel like they can actually have an understanding of, okay, maybe that's actually the tool that I want, because there's no tool that's perfect for every single person, or there's no one tool that's right for everybody. Every single tool has its purpose. It's not like you carry a hammer with you and it's going to solve all your problems, right? You got to have a saw, you got to have a drill, you got to have the bits, right? You got to have all the little components and accessories that you should outfit on your drones or your systems or your services that you're providing to be able to serve your client properly. And that's how I feel about that. And that's why I don't think it's going to cause any issues at all for me.
The pushback to that might be that, persons have been accustomed to getting one specific drone from DJI that is able to cover, a wide range of applications, whereas now you're looking at one tool for this. And to be fair, we've seen DJI go in that direction as well, because they've done a lot of separation with what their drone models are allowed to do now. But now you see you're going to have that more of an issue now, whereby you're going to have one drone for this purpose, another drone for this purpose, because based on what I've seen, there aren't that many manufacturers that can make drones that cover as wide a spectrum. And top of my head, I could actually probably think of one, maybe two, that cover as wide a range. And then you add the price factors on top of that, you're looking at, multiples the time to get less ability.
Yeah. I'm okay. I hear what you're saying, but let me paint the picture a little bit different here. Right. I think if someone is dependent on one kind of system, then they are going to make themselves irrelevant. And the reason I say that, and I'm not trying to be harsh, you need to be able to be diverse in terms of any system or application that is thrown your way. Because guess what? Here in the States, sometimes projects, we can't even use certain systems. We have to use something entirely different. And if you can't use a different system, guess what? You don't have that job. You just lost all that money, or not even going to make that money. But honestly, I think, and this is where DJI is really smart, because they've been slowly getting us used to, okay, well, I got to buy this system for this one, this system for that one, this system for that one. They've been training us pretty well for the last, I would say 6-7 years. Because if we look all the way back when they had the Phantom line and the Mavic line, right? We're all now just accustomed to a Mavic style drone because they just fold out and it's great. To be honest, I think the engineering is a little dumb on that. I'd rather have something that's kind of fixed, because there's so many just weak breakpoints. Granted, I haven't broken any of my systems, but you have a ton of different points of failure. Okay. And they're very small. But at the same time, DJI has also invested hundreds of millions of dollars into research and development to be able to manufacture their own camera systems. Obviously, they have the collaboration with Hasselblad. They broke ties with FLIR, because obviously FLIR is now a Teledyne company here in the States. Yep. And now they then had to manufacture their own thermal-based imaging, sensing tech. And so they've gotten us very used to and accustomed to buying multiple systems. Because if you go all the way back and you look at the Mavic 2 line, they had all of their consumer style. So they had the Mavic 2 Pro and the Mavic 2 Zoom. But then if you wanted something that was enterprise, that had thermal capabilities, they had their M2E, which had a little thermal camera and a little RGB camera on it. And I think you could put like a beacon, and there's also RTK capability as well, because RTK was kind of newish to the market. But that was also like an $8,000 or $9,000 drone.
Yeah.
Which they've kind of followed suit with $8,000, $9,000 thermal drones ever since the Mavic 2 Pro or Mavic 2 Enterprise.
Yeah.
And then they came out with the Phantom 4 Pro RTK edition, which was several $1,000s more than the regular Phantom 4 Pro. And then they had the multispectral variant.
Multispectral, yeah.
Right? And so all of those were fixed cameras. You couldn't swap the payloads out. And now, if you look at Autel was actually trying to go the other route where you can swap out payloads, which, was still the same Mavic style system, fold out arms, whatever, but never really caught on because everyone got so used to DJI. And again, we're talking 6-7 years ago at this point now, maybe even longer. I don't know. It's been a while. Then obviously they came out with the Mavic 3 lineup. There's 8 different versions of a Mavic 3. Mavic 3, Mavic 3 Classic, Mavic 3 Cine, Mavic 3 Pro, Mavic 3 Pro Cine, Mavic 3 Enterprise, Mavic 3 Thermal, and Mavic 3 Multispectral.
Yeah.
8 different Mavic 3s, all with different purposes. Obviously, 5 of them were more for like the photography and cinematography side, and the other 3 more for enterprise. But guess what? If you want to do multispectral, well, they kind of cheated a little bit because their multispectral one can also do mapping, but you also lost the capability of that telephoto lens. So you could either choose the enterprise or the multispectral. And then if you wanted thermal, then you had to buy the M3T.
Yeah.
Right? But the M3T can't do mapping properly. You could do it, but you don't have the mechanical shutter. So now right there, you're about like over $12,000, $13,000 in, plus batteries, call it $16,000 in. That's a lot of money, and that's two different systems. Where if you wanted to upgrade the payload, you couldn't. You would have to buy an entirely new system. We just saw the same thing happen with now they call it the Matrice line. So now the Matrice 4E and the Matrice 4T. And now they have the dock versions, right? So if you want to do mapping, you have to get the M4E. If you want to do thermal data collection, you have to get the M4T, right? And then if you want the IP rated ones, well, guess what? The batteries don't work from the M4E and the M4T in the dock versions. The dock versions are the IP rated ones. So guess what? Now you just completely made it very complex. And to make matters worse, if you wanted the cinematography drone, which I just picked up the M4 Pro recently, those batteries are not interchangeable. So completely different battery setup for the M4 Pro line and completely different setup for the Matrice line. They did this on purpose. And I tell people DJI is really a battery company that just happens to sell drones because they make a killing on their batteries. They really do. Those drones, again, I know they're very subsidized, but so this is why I try and advocate for and want to start advocating for these new systems, because guess what? This drone that I built behind me cost me about $1,500, but now I can modify and put whatever payload I want on there. I bought a used mirrorless camera that's on there. It's 24 megapixels. It's already 4 megapixels more than the M4E. Granted, I know it's not an M4E. I know it's way bigger. It doesn't have all the capabilities of it, but maybe I just need a system that just maps. Maybe I don't need all of these other fancy, really cool features, which granted, they are freaking awesome. I love all the stuff that the M4E does. But if 95% of my projects are just mapping, why do I need to pay for all those features that I most likely won't ever use? So what if you could build a system that over time, guess what? A new mirrorless camera comes out. And so it makes the price of maybe the higher megapixel one even cheaper.
Right.
All I have to do is spend maybe $1,000 or $1,500 for a new camera. I just put it in there. It's pretty much already compatible with the entire ecosystem that I have customized for my specific use case. Same mentality around these other manufacturers that are coming out of, well, okay, maybe they don't have this specific camera, that specific camera. Well, for the most part, you can integrate whatever you want. Because at the end of the day, the drone is just the drone. It's the payload that you put on there that is going to help you provide the service that you're trying to provide to your client. So if you want multispectral, LiDAR, methane detection, if you want to do multispectral, a thermal, whatever you want to do, you can integrate it onto your drone. And a lot of the third-party like payload manufacturers that are not DJI, but there's tons of companies that make sensors. The drone is just a vehicle. You put whatever sensor you want on there, and you can go and collect data. And that's where I see the value in companies outside of DJI that are building these systems. They're never going to be as sexy. I shouldn't say never. They won't be as sexy for DJI for a while, right? They're not going to look all nice and your packaging and all this other stuff. It doesn't matter. I need something that functions for what I need it to do. Looks are just a bonus. So that's my feelings around it. Yes, it can create some complexity for people, especially if it's the first time that they're getting into it, but you get used to it. Once you know how to fly, some of these third-party systems, you can fly just about anything. DJI really made us like very accustomed to the way that they did things, and they did a fantastic job at doing it. I give them props for it. To kind of just wrap this all up, I think like diversity is the most important part, especially when you're getting into this. I know starting out, you can't just go dump money everywhere, but over time, I encourage people to be more diverse in the tools that they invest into, because it will make them a better service provider, because they'll be able to offer services that other people and other service providers can't because of that diversity that they have.
I think you just made I think you probably made the best argument that I've heard, justifying not really justifying, but kind of giving the strawman argument against getting away from locked into the DJI ecosystem. And I think when you put it across like that, the argument makes a lot more sense for the commercial application. And I think that is how you guys kind of may not have a choice but to look at it like that just now. But I think that is one of the best ways that it has been put across, in support of maybe we should be looking at diversifying and becoming versed in other systems.
Yeah. Well, it's just the reality of the situation. I could sit here and complain all day long, just like what I see people do on the Facebook groups. That's not going to do anything. Yes, you can put your opinion out there, but if you're going to consistently complain and be like, oh, this is stupid. Oh, I hate this. This is not right. This is un-American. I don't care. Like, this is what's happening. Figure it out. That I'm being very brutally honest about this, but I grew up accepting that if that's the way that things are, well, guess what? I'm going to figure out how to overcome that and make it work for me. And that's how you go from a good business owner to a successful business owner and operator, is you have to overcome adversities like that. Things are always going to get thrown in your way. Things are always going to try and stop you from succeeding. And if you're just going to sit and complain, just like what most people do, well, okay, fine, but you're not going to go anywhere with that. Now, what I'm not saying here, though, is that you can absolutely fight for what you believe is right. Like, I will never take that away from somebody. But if you're going to continue to complain about a situation that is already moving forward and is already in that motion, then yes, we can absolutely recognize the situation, but to not be a victim of it, not to victimize yourself of it. Like, if that's the reality of the situation, well, then deal with it. And, you just have to overcome these things. Nothing was easy when I first started out. The amount of things that I've failed at, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that I've lost because I thought that I was doing the right thing, or I thought I was investing into the right thing, and it didn't. Those were just all learning opportunities for me. And I continue to learn in this industry. I continue to make mistakes, but that's what makes me better. That's what makes everybody better as they grow. I sound very harsh in saying all that stuff, but that's just it's just the reality of it.
It is. And you just have to learn how to deal with it. I know you have the video that you're working on, the project that you're working on with the 16 companies, but anything that you maybe have gotten to fly before, or just seen the specs on paper that you're really interested in seeing?
Actually, there's some new companies that I didn't even know existed, where they're just making these really small systems. Some of them are actually doing a 3D printing route, which I think is really interesting. It opens up, the opportunity for, okay, here's a scenario. And I think a lot of people may be pretty familiar with this. you crash a DJI drone. Well, guess what? You got to send it to DJI to go and get it repaired, or you have to send it to an authorized DJI repair center, right? Yeah. That takes time. You're out for a bit. Well, guess what? Maybe you can get the 3D print file from the company for the specific component that you broke. Whether if you have a 3D printer or not, you can send it to somebody that has a 3D printer, and you can get that part within a few days. Or you can print the part yourself in a few hours, and guess what? You can be back up in the air. Like, I think that is like amazing, and I think opens the doors for just a lot of opportunity, because then you can start custom 3D printing your own whatever, like your own accessories. Like, for example, like this drone that I have here, you can see it's very terrible 3D print mount on it, but here's like, that's the really dumb camera mount that I made, and it's just held on by zip ties. You can kind of see that, but I'm not like an architect or an engineer or anything. It was just, I quickly was able to just design that model and integrate it onto that drone. And now if I want to integrate, a thermal camera, I can do that too. So I think it opens up the opportunity, for just a lot of innovation and a lot of creative ways to integrate, hardware onto other hardware. So there are a few companies that I think are doing that, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to share that in that big project that I'm working on.
Actually really looking forward to that and seeing you get the hands-on on all of those different systems.
I've flown a few of them already, but I think it would be great to actually be at these companies' headquarters and being able to speak with the engineers and the developers there, and even the owners of the companies, to learn more about their vision, understanding what it is that they're trying to do different and how they're best trying to support the industry. This is not like a showdown at all. This is more of a showcase. So I'm creating basically like call it like a talent show, right? I'm giving the stage to everybody, and I'm going to cover everybody fairly, to be able to, demonstrate their technology, what they're doing. And, who knows, maybe somebody out there is looking for that specific system that they watched in the video that didn't even know existed, because there's really not a lot of videos that exist out there about these other companies. That there are, but not from a third party resource, I would say.
Yeah, I think the industry needs a lot of that, because everybody goes out there and markets themselves, and we get to see the best of everything. But having independent third party or somebody with a non-biased opinion of it covering it would really assist, because you see a lot.
And that actually has experience in it too. And I think with me being in this space for so long, I consider myself an expert in that, and I know specifically what I would want in a system. So there will be a bias, but it's more of a bias in terms of like what I like, and what my certain expectations would be in a system. It may not align with somebody else, that does something completely different than what I do in the industry, but that's okay, right? This is my perspective. This is my specific bias in terms of how I'm approaching covering these videos. I'm going to do it as best as I can to be as unbiased as possible. Right. But obviously I come from a mapping and LiDAR background. I'm not much of a, specific industry use case of covering telecom lines, or not telecom, but like telecom power or poles, or doing transmission and distribution line assessments. Like, there's some really cool tools that exist out there, and systems that are built for like one purpose, and they do it really, really well. So yeah, I'm stoked for this big project. It's getting way bigger than I thought it was going to be. And I gotta spend a whole lot more money than I thought I was going to spend. But honestly, I'm excited. I think this needs to be done, given just the situation that's going on here in the States. And a lot of people just don't know what exists out there. And I think, finally I can, give a platform for this. So I think it'd be cool.
We're looking forward to see that, and good luck with all of the stuff that is involved in getting that done. It sounds exhausting, but it sounds
I won't be sleeping much for about 2.5 weeks, but it'll be a good time. I'll be with drones, so I can't really complain. I'll be in my happy place.
Yeah. Sorry, so we could continue this conversation for hours, and I know we have a limited time frame. So I wanted to get back to LiDAR. Now, LiDAR is something that, especially in the Caribbean, we use it. Predominantly more from a terrestrial standpoint, I think more and more agencies now are moving into drone-based, and you are one of the foremost, I would say, experts when it comes to LiDAR training and applications and stuff like that. So I wanted to get some education for the listeners in terms of, so starting with one of the biggest misconceptions about LiDAR, because people think LiDAR is more expensive to the photogrammetry alternative, so it could be the be all end all for everything else. So like, what are some of the big misconceptions that you've seen and have had to address when it comes to LiDAR?
Well, I think the first one, there's this term called vegetation penetration.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to clear that up real quick, because when you hear that, you're like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. The laser is going through the leaves and the branches and everything. No, it's not. That's just not how it works. The best way that I like to explain this is, if you were to stand underneath a tree, look straight up, and anywhere that you can see the sky, like peering through the leaves, the branches, the sticks of the trees, that's where the LiDAR will penetrate through. So basically, as that LiDAR sensor is flying on the drone over top the trees, it's sending out hundreds of thousands of pulses of light. You can't see it. It's invisible.
Okay.
But anywhere that you can see straight through, that's where the light is going to penetrate through. It's just like the sun, right? The sun is penetrating through the vegetation, and that's why you can see all the sunspots, in a forest. So really the big misconception is, oh, I can see through everything. That's not the case. Like, even in very thick vegetation, LiDAR can struggle. That's why there's all kinds of different LiDAR sensors that have different capabilities and different price points. You can spend as little as $5,000 for a LiDAR sensor, all the way up to $4.5 million for a LiDAR sensor. They all have very specific use cases, and different environments that they operate best in. So I just want to get that out of the way. In addition to that, you mentioned something of LiDAR being the end all be all, and I don't think it is. I think LiDAR is just another tool in the toolbox. There are plenty of times where there's clear, just land that doesn't have a lot of vegetation on it, and you can actually get really good topography data with just regular RGB imagery and creating a very basic point cloud out of that. And that's honestly what a lot of construction sites use.
All right.
Now, you can actually pair them up together, because for one, the RGB side of creating terrain models, that's all using what's called passive sensing technology, meaning whatever the sensor sees, that's what it's going to capture. And it's reading the light that's being outputted, or emitted, I should say, from the sun, and reflecting that back into the sensor. Where with a LiDAR sensor, that's called an active remote sensing technology, meaning it's emitting its own energy source, which that's what those laser points are.
Right.
So when new developments are starting, the best way to get an understanding of the topography is to use a LiDAR sensor. Now, they'll typically use a LiDAR sensor maybe a few times during a development project, but once it starts and the ground has been cleared, they're going to revert back to using just a traditional doing photogrammetry with an RGB sensor, because it's cheaper and it's faster and it doesn't cost as much to integrate that technology. And I think people sometimes get caught up of, okay, well, I need to get, to do all the photogrammetry first with an RGB sensor, and then, invest into LiDAR. Or they'll do it the other way around, and they'll say, I need to go buy the LiDAR sensor first so I can get all these $1,000+ paying jobs, because there's more money in that. And while true, yes, I have actually charged more money in some cases for just doing RGB data collection than some of my LiDAR projects. And they could even be much smaller sites. So it really comes down to like the specific needs that your client is looking for on a project. Now, when it comes to building very high resolution, and what I mean by resolution in this sense of like 3D models is like actual edges and like building corners and curbs, urban environments, LiDAR is going to be very beneficial. Because if you remember what I said about the RGB side of things, where it's a passive remote sensing tech, well, there's no measurements, right? When you throw those 2D images into a piece of software, the software is then going to basically go through an algorithm to figure out, okay, where are all these points? That's how you can still get a point cloud out of an RGB mapping project, right? So the software figures it out. Obviously, software has gotten like phenomenal now. Back then it was kind of atrocious, and it was a lot of work to get a good 2D map and especially a 3D model out of the data. Now it's very much like pretty much automated. I mean, you can get a 3D model within minutes of throwing it into something like DJI Terra, or even Drone Deploy. So by using both of those technologies together, you can get a very high resolution of the like actual physical structures of buildings and urban environments, even trees and whatnot, and then use the RGB imagery to actually colorize everything. Because LiDAR data, there's no color data. It's just a physical data point. That's all it is. The RGB images is what actually gives us the color on the point clouds. So that's how you can use those two in tandem. But yeah, just I would say like, yes, LiDAR is a fantastic technology, but it's not the end all be all. And it's, it can add actually a lot more complexity than simplicity. When compared to RGB data collection. But again, it also always comes back down to what is the project that you're doing and what is it that you're serving to your client as that service for the deliverables. That's kind of what I really sum up the whole thing between those two.
So you and I were talking before this, and we were talking about using LiDAR at night. And I know that was a project that you are currently working on or were working on. And that's also one of the, because, and it's only when you said it was actually the first time I thought about it, and it was like, yeah, but you should be able to use LiDAR at night.
Yeah.
And it's not something because, you think mapping is a daytime thing, and the sun and the angles and all those shadows and all the different stuff. But when it comes to LiDAR and mapping at night, what is the, I don't want to say benefits and downsides, but what kind of application would you see that being used for?
So the reason why I was am still working on that project, it was actually a very unique situation that I was put into in terms of collecting basically a topography data set near an airport. And this happens to be one of the more busier airports here in the state of Florida. And it was literally right across the highway was the final approach
Right.
for where the airplanes are landing. So they're probably like 100 feet at most above the ground in that area that I needed to fly. In order for me to actually do the full data collection, typically the process is I have to go and get approvals and waivers for that. FAA will approve that, and then I have to coordinate with air traffic control in that area, where I would have to stop and start the drone at multiple times. And if you're at all familiar with LiDAR data collection, that sucks. Like, I hate doing that because there's a whole lot more work on the back end to then go and clean all that stuff up, clean out all the bad data that was collected, and just having to move the drone up and down. It causes a lot of issues.
Yeah.
So what I instead wanted to do, because they also have to control the airplanes that are coming around, they have to move them over maybe to a different runway. Maybe the airport that I'm working on only has one runway, so it's impossible for them to, reroute traffic in that sense. So given that LiDAR is its own active sensing, remote sensing technology and emits its own light, I can fly in the middle of the night and still get good topo data because I don't need the sun at all to be out. So
Right.
The idea is, because the client only cares about the topography data, they don't care about a pretty 3D model or anything. They literally just need the 3D polylines that they can embed into their civil 3D model. That's all they care about. They don't care about anything else. I opted to do the flight at night when there's no traffic. And I'm talking about 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, that's very low traffic hours. If not, there's no traffic going on at all near this airport.
Right.
And that, for me, that will save hours upon hours of work on the back end after, in terms of the data processing, and just make the workflow in terms of data collection a whole lot smoother, instead of having to constantly be on the phone for 2 hours with ATC, moving the drone, dropping it down, just doing battery swaps, do all these different things that add just a whole lot of complexity to something that should just be very simple. Throw the drone up, capture the data, and be done. Like, that's all I wanted to do. And so, yeah, that's ultimately like that. The reason why you can do that with LiDAR data, where if it's, well, you can do it with thermal too, but thermal is a different kind of application. But if it was like multispectral or RGB images, you can't get any data because you need the sun to emit light so you can actually see what's going on.
Okay. And so are you doing a video on that one as well?
I am. Yeah, I'm working on getting the final approvals from FAA. They need some more documents from me, but it looks like it's going to go through, and then I'll do going to do the full filming of that. That's probably going to come out later now because of this new project that I just started on.
Right.
But something I am excited to work on and put that video out for.
All right. Sorry. So I need to let you go just now. So a couple quick things I want to get to. First one is for the Caribbean pilots watching, or the persons that want to get into the drone business. What would be your immediate first step recommendation?
Watch my videos. I'm kidding. Well, yeah, I've got a ton of free resources that exist out there, but actually, this is one that saying that means a lot to me. And I actually have it tattooed on my forearm here, and it means succeed through failure. Do not be afraid to try something new, try something difficult, take risks. Like that is how I've gotten to where I am. Granted, I've been in this space for over 10 years, but I can promise you we can sit here and chat for many more hours about all of the failures that I've had to get to this point. And I still make failures. There's a project that I did about 2 months ago that cost me $3,500. And that was because of a mistake that I made. Granted, there are some other things that happened for why I made that mistake. But that's just part of it. Like, part of being a drone service provider is you're going to run into situations that can be uncomfortable, can cost you money, can honestly suck. But that's just the reality of it. And if you can't continue to grow in learning through these things and through the failures, you're never going to succeed in this space. The second thing I would say is be patient. These things do not happen overnight. It's very easy to look at me and see all these things that I have going on, be like, oh, well, wow, all he has to do is just wave his magic wand and now he's got projects, which honestly, I still sometimes struggle to get projects, like even in the position that I'm in. Be patient. Like that's just the reality. Like, you really have to be patient. You have to trust the process, and you have to continue to just put yourself out there. If all you do is just post on LinkedIn every once in a while, maybe you have a Facebook business page, or you make a video here and there that you post on YouTube as a showcase. Nobody's going to find your stuff. You need to be consistent. You need to be constantly putting your stuff out there, because you don't know who's online that day and who's going to see your work. Or you don't know that maybe this one guy, real estate developer, sees your post today, and 8 months later he reaches out to you saying, hey, are you still doing drone work? Are you still able to provide? Because I can tell you, I've got clients that I met 4 or 5 years ago that I do work for every once in a while. Or some of them take 18 months to finally get to the point where they're ready, to start hiring you for services. So be patient. That's something else that I would say. And then probably third most important one is continue to educate yourself and continue to challenge yourself. Kind of goes hand in hand with the first point that I said is, succeed through failure, and like, don't be afraid to take that risk. But you also need to be learning. You need to constantly be learning. Every single resource that you can get, whether it's free, whether it's paid, whether it's opportunities to learn in person. If you want to come and learn with me, I'd be more than happy to train you. Or, some of my competitors, or maybe, go to some other countries to get some education from. Do that. You're going to be doing yourself a favor and actually putting yourself further ahead than other people that are just getting started and want to brute force it and just figure it out as they go. Because it's not fun. I've done it, and I wish that the resources that exist today, I wish I had it back then, but that just wasn't the case. Yeah. So now is the best time, more than ever, to just throw yourself into, if you've ever been curious about this, it doesn't hurt to try. It seriously does not hurt to try. And it's also a fun industry. Like, we had some very serious topics that we talked about on this podcast, and, some global situations that are happening. But at the end of the day, like, this is probably one of the coolest industries that you can be a part of. Everybody that's in it loves drones. They love talking about it. They could fly all day long. Like I said, we can keep talking on about drones, but there's some genuinely awesome people in this industry that are doing some really cool stuff. And, being a drone service provider, you're often on projects by yourself. So it's great to connect with other people in the community, to have just conversations and, have open discussions like this, even if it's just through, LinkedIn DMs or Instagram DMs. It doesn't matter. Just, this is an awesome community. And I promise you, you guys will have a great time being in it. And you're flying drones. Like, that's cool. Come on. Like, what other job like has a cool factor behind it?
So last question before I let you go. It's a question I ask all of my guests. And that is, what is one thing you wish you knew about the drone industry before choosing it as a career?
That's a good question. I kind of fell into it a long time ago. That's a really good question. I wish that I knew that there was more than just taking cool photos and videos with it when I first got started. Obviously, you know, I had a completely different approach. I was doing it for cinematography and, you know, high-end photography. But I would say, you know, now obviously there's a lot of stuff that exists out there, like cool stuff that's happening with drones. So I think people are a little bit more aware. But I wish I knew the community that existed then, because I'm now starting to meet some legends in the industry that I didn't really know about. Maybe they just don't put themselves out there that much. I don't know. I'm an internet guy now, so I don't know. People just think I'm a YouTube drone pilot, but I'm not. So I don't know. I don't know if that really answers the question. But I guess that's what I would say.
It does, and it's always be interesting to hear the responses to that. All right, Dylan, I know I need to let you go. Let the people know where they can find you and get more information on the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So Pilot Byte is my education and training company. If you guys want to learn about drone mapping, 3D modeling, LiDAR data collection, you can go to my website, www.pilotbyte.com. If you want to see some videos from me, easiest way to find me is search Dylan Drones, and I'll be the first thing that pops up. Follow me on LinkedIn. I try and be pretty active on there. I kind of share like a little bit of behind the scenes of some projects, and I actually have this really unique thing that I've been doing at the start of February from this year. I have this platform or like web series called Drone Pilot Insider Uncut, where I film all of my projects from start to finish, and I actually kind of annotate and talk about, you know, how the project's going, what I'm doing, the data that I'm collecting, what I'm charging for my clients. It's been a pretty fun series to shoot. And they're anywhere from like an hour to 2 hour long videos, and they're uncut. So you actually get to see everything that I do. So you can check that out. It's both on my YouTube channel and on my Pilot Byte platform. But also just feel free to reach out. Like, I'm very friendly. I love to answer questions. It may take me a few days, but I promise you I'll get back to it. I love supporting this industry. So yeah, if you guys want to reach out, please don't be a stranger.
Nice one. And as usual, all links will be in the description for this episode. Dylan, it was great. Loved the conversation. Loved having you on. Anything before we head out?
No, I really appreciate this opportunity. It was great chatting.
You too. It was great chatting with you too, man. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care.